Jump in with Coach Quick. Coach Quick is the director of global scouting now for the CFL. Coach Quick has been an athletic director, a head coach, D-line coach, a linebacker coach, D coordinator. So just a plethora of experience coming from this next presenter too.
All right, guys. Hope Paul, you got me?
Yeah, I got you. Your camera.
We're all set. Good. Well, I'm glad everybody's here tonight. I tell you what, I'm humbled by this cast of characters Paul put together. Not only the 5 presenters, but the people that are in the audience tonight. Wow, what an elite group of football coaches. We're very fortunate to have you all in one spot. We really appreciate it, Paul. I have to tell a story about Scott Brady. You know, we often talk about being prepared to take advantage of opportunity, you know, and he's one of the bright young coaches in our university system. Has been a head coach, assistant head coach at DC. When I first met him 10 years ago, I got a phone call from a guy that wanted to come and shadow us in Toronto, and he showed up and he came to practice. We went through the first 3 days, and he shadowed, didn't say a whole lot. Well, on that third day, our D-line coach got sick. So old Bart turns to Scott and said, "You're coaching the D-line today." And we were all like, okay. So this young guy goes down there. I wasn't sure how he was going to do it. When I was done with the linebacker drills, I kind of looked down to see how he was doing. And all I could see was his finger in Adriano Belli's chest. And I knew at that moment this guy was going to be okay. So you always have to be ready. You know, my grandfather told me that wisdom is to be shared, or else it's nothing more than lost smoke. So I think it's great that the guys that are talking tonight are taking the time and doing what they're doing. And that's the great thing about football, is we want to share the wisdom that we have. You know, no one guy is smarter than the other. What we have better than the other guy or different than the other guy is our experiences. So every single one of us, the 100 guys that are involved tonight, each of us has something worthwhile, has a nugget or a novel thought. And that's what I'm going to try and share with you tonight, is a couple nuggets, a couple novel thoughts, something that you can take away. And I'm going to do it maybe a little bit different. I believe in unconventional wisdom. I think that we have to be novel. We have to find better ways continually to advance our game and help our players become more elite as we chase that success we want to have. First thing I want to do, I had an opportunity. Every time I speak, I want to talk about Generation Z. These are the guys that we're coaching today. Those 13 to 25-year-old guys that are raised with computers, they're technology savvy. This is the first generation that has lived their whole life with technology. Every other generation, a portion of their life was lived in the past, pre-technology. But these guys have been raised with it. 98%, and this is worldwide. I went back and across the world as I've traveled, 98% of the kids and the young adults have cell phones. They watch an average of 3 hours of video a day. Now, if you would have told me 40 years ago that our players were going to have a device in their hands that we could share video and playbooks and those things on. Remember, I started when we still had, we're using film. And the first computers we had were stacks of cards. We key punched in our analytics. So now they're watching 3 hours a day. Our job is get them to watch 3 hours a day of football instead of the other stuff. So we have to learn how to do that. I want you to take a look at these goldfish here. And there was an empirical study that was done. Now, I'd like to have this job because there was a study done of these goldfish, and they studied them and they tested them. And what they found, that these goldfish had an attention span of 9 seconds. 9 seconds. Can you see that? And these goldfish swimming around. Now, most of you guys that are from Canada know Fraser Sopik, and I had an opportunity to work with him a little bit before the draft. He was a 2018 Defensive Player of the Year in youth sports. And so we'll take Fraser as an example because he's a great Generation Z player, was great in university, and Calgary had the wisdom to pick him in the draft, and he has shown to be a great professional as well. Fraser Sopic's attention span, remember those goldfish, 9 seconds. Fraser Sopic, 8 seconds. That's what we're dealing with today. We have to be able to grab the people we're teaching's attention. We have 8 seconds. Shoot it in bursts. It's like a machine gun. We have to shoot in bursts. These are people that grow up with greatly produced video in front of them all the time. So now we have to teach in those 8-second bursts and give them an opportunity to learn, because that's how they're going to learn best. Let's remember that as we continue to teach these players and try to do so as we're moving forward. Robin talked about it, and I believe it's important. I was asked not too long ago, what's the most undercoached element in sport? And I said, stance. We all want to move the steps. We all want to drop. We all want to get in block destruction. We all want to teach scheme. We want to get what, but stance. As you can see in that picture there, a good sport posture, it doesn't change. We have to have good bend in the ankles. We all miss that. As I've traveled looking for athletes around the world, the inflexibility of our ankles is amazing. It's an area that needs to be addressed. Bend to the knees, bend to the hips. Every sport we do, it's very similar. So we need to focus on that stance. And this Latin here, it means prepared for everything. Our stance should prepare our athletes for everything. Just as Robin's guys had to step up and scrape to play run, and they had to drop to play pass, we have to put our guys in stances that are important. And I think this is an element that we can't forget. So even when you're in walkthrough, don't let them get lazy. Make them be in a good stance. Make sure they shuffle run. They don't need to stand up and wander in a walkthrough. They need to mirror the same stance, the same step patterns that they're going to go when we go into drill work and unit work and teamwork. I really believe that's important. Now, we're going to talk. I skipped at the beginning, and I'm sorry. Paul got me all excited with all these celebrities in the audience tonight. So we're going to talk about first touch pass rush. Now, I really believe this is important. As I watch camps, as I watch players in pre-practice, as I watch guys in warm-up, there's a lot of static hand fighting. And pass rush has to press the quarterback. You have to maintain the force vectors. You have to move vertically. You have to make the quarterback uncomfortable. You have to get the quarterback off the spot. All those cliches that we're hearing out there today, but we have to be moving when we're initiating pass rush. And I believe pass rush is speed. If we're not moving with speed, we're not going to cause. If you take the times over the last 10 years of the launch times of quarterbacks, there's a diminish from 10 years ago today. There's almost a half-second difference in the time of the launch. In our league, in the CFL, on first down, it's getting out in under 2 seconds. And even on the second and long scenarios, you're still, if it's 2-3 or beyond, that's a rarity. So you're looking at less than 2.5 seconds on probably 85% of the balls that are being thrown. So we need to be moving with speed, and we need to really make that quarterback get off his spot. To be able to move, to be able to be a good pass rusher, you have to have great flexibility. And you can see it. These are just random shots pulled on 3 great pass rushers. Now look at this guy. He's no different. Look at the same thing. You take the greatest pass rusher in the CFL, you take the great pass rushers in the NFL, and they all look the same. They got great flexibility, ankles, knees, hips, right? They all are the same. So I think that's really important. So I'm going to use Fraser as an example. I'm not going to use video tonight. I'm going to use stills. And I think stills are a great tool to use as we're giving feedback to our players. Also, because of the Zoom format and the uncertainty of video, I felt like I wanted to make sure that you could see the key coaching points that I wanted to make, all right? So the first is the flexibility, right? So very simple drill. You get in basically a catcher stance. The opposite hand grabs the opposite ankle and you rotate up, because eventually we're going to get, I'll show you a similar position. We're running a rip speed rush. You're going to see the rusher in a very similar position to what Frazier is here. The difference will be just how they're aligned to the offensive lineman or to the line of scrimmage. Here's a drill that I want you to think about. Now, we all know that practice, off-season training, there's a lot of time that we're not in pads. What can we do with guys? How can we help their hips? I thought Robin did a great job tonight, and Noel did a good job talking about the eyes. Okay, how do we react to those eyes? The stimulus and how we react. Eyes are so important to what we do, but then how our body reacts and adapts. So I like to use a noodle. That's what the young man there, Philip, is holding, is a noodle. It's a styrofoam swim noodle, like you give your kids in a pool. Great teaching aid. Earlier, Robin talked about high hands, low hands. We'll talk about that in a minute. Again, it's all about sequencing what we're going to do in pass rush. So here we have Frazier. He has his hands above. He's relaxed. And then we drop the noodle. He has to drop his hips and catch it. Now, you may think that that's an easy task, but now look where his hips are. Look, his ankles, his hips, and his knees have all bent. He's maintained. Look at his straight back. Look at his eyes are up, and he caught in a balanced position. He was able to catch that. So with no sound as a cue, just on a visual cue, he has to drop and catch. As an athlete gets better at that, now you could use a broomstick, which has a little bit more mass, and now it will be just a little bit quicker. So you can advance that so they have to be quicker. But I guarantee you what, if you do that drill alone, as far as working get off and starts and eye sequencing off of the adapting to the motion, it'll help you a lot. Now, I want you going back to stance here a little bit. It's generational, right? Or it's not generational. Here's two of the greatest pass rushers of the game from 20 years distance, maybe 30 years distance. Look at those stances, very similar, very similar. Look at the edge rusher here. Look at this edge rusher here. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to dissect Frazier's stance and his start for you to give you what I think are the key points. First, you can see he has good bend in his hips and his knees. Now, I think I'm going to show you he has a little bit too much forward lean, and especially when you're in a two-point stance, what I have found is that the angle of the knee should be symmetrical to the angle of the hip, not the waist. The waist, so often they bend at the waist, and we need to bend at the hip because that's the two-joint muscle. So you could see that bend. Now look at if it was a similar bend to the knees and the back, you could see what that angle would be at. So pre-snap, I like where his eyes are at. I use hips for everything, low hip. If I'm tracking for a tackle, it's the near hip. If I'm involved in man coverage, near hip. If I'm looking for the stimulus for my get off or stance, near hip. So you can see his eyes, and I'll point that out here in a minute. So this is his initial stance. One of the things you need to look at with both the three-point stance and the two-point stance above is they're starting from a loaded position. And actually, that's what Frazier is going to do here in a minute. But you can see I'd rather have him in that plane so that all the force vectors are working together. Now, we're going to look at the get-off that he has, and get-off is so important. A while back when I was a head coach, I had a D-line coach, and he was down there working get off, and he had the old board. And he just had a 2x8 on an old sled, and they'd work get off, by the hour. And you know what? It was probably one of the best defensive lines I was ever part of because those guys got off the ball. And they reestablished the line of scrimmage on every snap. So let's go back and look at Frazier, that same location we had before. Now, the thing I want you to note, and if you would think about those first two pictures when I had the fish and I showed that Frazier only had an 8-second attention span. If you remember, the picture on the left was with him in Calgary. The picture on the right was at Western. The biggest difference, he's a little more stacked and jacked in pro football than even he was in college. And you can see here, he has a little bit of a bend in his back, a little arch in his back, and I'd really like to see that straightened. To do that, he's going to have to drop his hips. So one of the areas that we were working on was his hip flexibility. So yoga, dance, things of that nature are very important to him, as well as those exercises I showed earlier. Now, eyes. Look where his eyes are at. He has low eyes. The hardest thing is to get our players to have low eyes. Whether it's tracking a tackle, whether it's tracking a hip in man coverage, or it's using the hip for a stimulus to get off, whether I'm a D lineman, a blitzing linebacker, or otherwise. So here, now this is actually a sequence. So there was his initial step. As I got into the cadence, preparing, and a center put his hands on the ball, now you can see he had rocked back. Now he's loaded his stance. But again, you can see the arch in his back. I would love his hips to be down a little bit and that back to be straighter, because he's going to lose some of the force, because actually some of the force will be going more through his sixth and seventh vertebrae than through his ears. So I'd like to get that back flatter, a lot like that red line. And then on the last one is right at the moment of the snap. Now you can see he has a straighter back. So really, he rocked his stance. He preloaded the stance in the second picture. In the third picture, he's really where I would have liked him to be to start. So really on his start, he was in a great stance. He just had to work into it. So as we're watching, let's make sure we know what we need to coach to get to that spot. So really for him, it was his hip flexibility and his core strength. He didn't have the core strength to allow himself to get a flat back. So as we worked his core and increased his hip flexibility, time went on, he was able to get into a far better stance, which made him even a better pass rusher. Remember last year, he had a block punt and off a get off the edge. Now, the other thing I want you to focus on, if you'll see where the knee is. So at the moment of start, you can see he's driving that knee towards the ground. So we've got a good stance. And now at that moment of get off, he's driving that knee to the ground. And then we're going to follow that get off into the next slide. Okay. As I've traveled around the world, I did 11 combines around the world this winter. The thing important to me that I had to really stress at each combine that I demanded, we carried this vertical jump machine all over the world. And what a pain it was to get it to Brazil and Japan and everywhere else. The reason we did is I really believe I want to see that an athlete gets triple extension. And it's really that I didn't need the machine. All I needed was a camera, because what I watch is he a 41-inch or is he a 23-inch vert? I'm looking, can he get triple extension? Ankles, knees, hips, and out the top. So we're looking for that triple extension. I want the same thing when he starts. So if I took that previous sequence and I carry it forward here now there he gets triple extension from his ankles all the way up through his ear. And this is true of any position. All I have to do is have him bring his hands forward to strike as an offensive lineman. All I have to do is get him in a little more settled position to be stock blocking. So I want to make sure that he's able to extend. When I see a 22, 21-inch vertical jump, I guarantee you if I get a snap of that at the apex of his jump, they won't have triple extension. The guy that got a 41-inch jump in Germany, kid from Russia, that kid, I guarantee he had triple extension. Now, the other thing I want you to see here is, look, it's parallel to the other leg is the next putt. So he's transitioning. He's fully extended with his right leg. Now he's got to transition to the left leg. And if they're running parallel planes, it's going to multiply my force. So I want to make sure that it looks just like that on his start. Then the third component, let's make sure where his arm is, where it finishes, it runs parallel to the other force vectors. So here is a great example. If I was an offensive line coach and I had stroke with both hands, I want to make sure that same force vector is parallel to the triple extension and to my power leg. should the same force should run through my arms. Now, that's going to magnify the force that I have to deliver on my opponent. And then the last component here is his eyes. So still see his eyes are focused. Very important. First touch. We want to make first touch. Offensive line coaches, you want to make first touch. It's almost like patty cake. Whoever touches first has got the greatest opportunity for success. And it goes to our eyes and it goes to our strike. First touch. So I want to if I get off and I get first touch, I am going to win 80 or more percent of the time. 8 out of 10 times, you're going to win. Even if he does a great job to recover. If you offensive line coaches get him to sit back inside, recover, get thick on me, and fight your butt off to get back in leverage position, you're only going to do that 20% of the time if you got a great athlete in the offensive line. If I can get off and I can get first touch, I'm going to win 80% of the time. If I can do that, and I can do that with half of my rushers, so I have 2 rushers that are winning 80% of the time, we're going to move the quarterback. Here, we talked about the rip, and I apologize for going quick here, no pun intended, but the rip, chop, swat, most popular things today. I'm seeing a lot of guys swat two-handed. The chop, which we'll talk about, rip. I want to share that because you can see here when I showed that picture of Frazier doing the flexibility on the slide with 3 pictures on it, you could see he was in this position, but in a squat, rotated. If he would have dropped one leg back and rotated his trunk, this is the position he'd be in. Look how low they are. That's where you got to be in lean. And I'm going to show you Frazier in a similar pass rush position. So I'm using the noodles here, and I'm either giving high hands or low hands. I'm giving a false cadence. I'm going to try and get him to jump, but he's moving off my foot and my hip, so I'm getting the visual key. But what he's really looking at here, and you can see his eyes in the picture to the left, is he's looking at my hands. So this is replicating high hands, low hands with nothing more simple than noodles. And I found these very helpful. So you can see, and then at the to the right, he finishes. And again, you can see the bend and you can see how low he is. You can see his flexibility. I mean, his hat is at armpit height or less. So he's doing a great job here with the chop. Low hands, chop. Now he had a rip. You can see the high hands. But here what I wanted to focus on, because I gave you the chop, now the finish. When do you win? When can you tell your athlete that he's won? The goal in pass rush is to get my hips past your hips. If I can't get my hips past your hips, I don't win. You can recover on me. I have to get my hips past yours. So what I really love here, this looks like a guy running a 100-meter dash. It doesn't look like somebody playing patty cake with a hand drill. He's running a 100-meter dash. I'll show you in a second. He's gonna be able to turn the edge. He's gonna move the quarterback into pocket. We'd like to get him on the ground, but how many sacks do you get a game? But if you can move the quarterback in a greater percentage of pass plays so he's not throwing from a Statue of Liberty posture, then we got a great chance to get errant throws and to affect the football game. Then we can get those interception returns that Noah was talking about. Okay, I want to show you here is he's starting to, we all talk about running the hoop. Everybody uses the big hoop. I encourage you to use a hula hoop and use that small circle. If you want to do get-offs at the beginning of a drill period, put a hula hoop. They get off, and they have to run around the hula hoop to get that short edge. The thing I want to focus on, is the eyes. Your body tracks the eyes. It's really simple. We're all primordial. We're all blessed. Everybody that's on this tonight is blessed because our ancestors could throw an implement and hit an object. If they couldn't throw an implement and hit their prey, we wouldn't be here. That clan would have died off. Our clans all could throw and hit. So we all have the ability to have hand-eye coordination. It's primordial. It's in our DNA. So if our eyes will follow, our body will follow our eyes. If we perceive correctly, the action will be correct. So let's make sure the eyes are going. But you can see he's starting to put the foot down to the inside. Now, I want to show you this one because how extreme it is. He did not lose balance. Look at that toe on his right foot. It's turned so it's almost perpendicular to the to his body. If I ran a line down through, it's perpendicular to his other leg. He's getting that much bend, which is going to shorten the edge, which again, if a quarterback's at 7.5, 7.75 yards, he has to turn that edge to be able to make that quarterback move. We want to get him out of the Statue of Liberty and make him change his launch. On the next one, you can see now he's brought the leg through. Look at that triple extension. He is a 100-meter dash to the quarterback here, and then he finishes it. So that's what once we get off, speed, hips passed, and then let's relocate, get that quarterback and press him. I'm just going to hit you a quick inventory of pass rush. I want to talk about power stab, or you may call it long arm. All right, you may be calling a one or two hand bull rush. I want to share with you, I had a chance to talk to one of the guys that is in the global draft, played at Colorado, really only started 1 year. I had a chance to talk to their linebacker coach. And this guy had two moves. He had a speed rip and he had a long arm. So I asked the coach about it. He said, Greg, that's exactly what we taught him. We taught him a speed rush with the rip, not even the chop, just the rip. And then if the guy set on him and he was thick, he long armed and he walked him right back. So if they wanted him, you say, what about a counter? He had no counter move. They never taught him a counter. If they needed him to get inside, they'd stun him. They run a complementary stunt with a linebacker or somebody inside. So the power stab is a great initial move. If someone gets too thick on you or they set on you, especially as a speed rusher, the ability to get into a long arm is really important. A club, or I call it pen and polka. You know, guys need something to be able to associate, right? I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, you know, the polka capital of the world in Parma, Ohio. And so when I talk about rush, pin, which is the club, and then everybody wants to get the hip swung, right? So the same thing. I want a club, and then it's 1, 2, 3, rip. So I'm going to club, and then I'm going to polka my hips around, and then I'm going to escape so that I clear the hips of the offensive lineman. So we're going to pin and polka. Handles. I'm going to jerk. I'm going to punch. I'm going to rip. I'm going to chop. I'm going to get a handle, or I'm going to lift the hood, which is I'm going to show you in a minute, which is now he gives me a high hands, and I'm going to lift the hood. I'm going to lift and come under with a rip and come through. Edges. I want to work edges. I don't want to rush thick. I got to rush edges. Out. We just talked speed rush. So out and then in. Out in, or I can come in. Noah was talking about the 4 eyes. I can be in and then out. Or I can teach double moves. Oh, Mike Sinclair. In, out, out. All the double moves from there. So I want my guys working edges. And then I'm going to talk about the spin. And I think I call it a flip, primarily because I work with too many coordinators. When I say I'm going to spin, they don't want you to spin, or a head coach doesn't. I don't spin. We flip our hips, and I'm going to show you in a second how to teach that will be successful. All right, so handles. Here's a good get off by Frazier. You can see I've got my foot up. I don't even have that foot in the ground yet. I've just lifted it, and he's already off. So great visual. His eyes were down. Now his eyes have come to my hands. Then my hand was high, so he took the inside hand and lifted. So he lifted the hood. Look at the bend. Look how low he is. Now he's going to step that left hip through, rip through, escape to the quarterback. That's from the left side. This one up here is to the right. So we have speed rushing outside, high hand. Now, you'll notice here I only have one noodle. That's because his eyes were getting confused. And when I had two noodles on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, he could handle two noodles. On the right side, he was having difficulty. So I stripped it down to one noodle until he mastered that. Then I added the second in. So you can see his hand. He has grasped it, and now he'll rip under. And then finish. And again, you can see his feet. You can see triple extension. Now, I think his arm is too wide. I'd like to get that elbow a little closer to his body. Okay, I'm talking to you about the chop flip, the chop spin, which is popular. So we have the same get off. We already looked at his chop. So we get to that point. what's important? What's important is look at his height here. His hips are below my hips. He needs to sit in my lap, and he is literally doing that. And again, if you'll notice, he's coming from the left side because we found for him to get the kinesthetic sense, we had to first teach it from the left side, then we went to the right side. So often players feel they're better from the right side, as he did. Where are you most comfortable, Frazier? He said right side. But he was slower to get the kinesthetic sense, so he's left. So we started teaching from the left. We literally set a chair and had him spin off the chair. He'd come down and chop, sit in the chair, rotate up, and finish. So he has to sit. He has to be low. So many times guys stand erect when they spin. You literally have to put my hips in his. I'm flipping my hips, and then I'm going to exit. Now, everybody knows it's no different than pulling as an offensive lineman. It's no different than transitioning as a defensive back. I need to drive the elbow and punch the other arm across. He's not as good as that as some that I think he needs to be, and he got a lot better. So here he is coming out, and what I want to point out here is he's dragging that backside shoulder. He needs to punch that through. You can see it again here. He needs to, that arm, so that left elbow should be punched back, and the right arm should be punched coming through by this point, which will allow him to clear the hips. And there he is there. You can see that his hips are cleared, but as you can see, it's on a different sequence. The one up there is the same sequence. The one in the bottom middle is a different play. All right, this is one I want to teach you. We do a lot with the clubs and the taps. This is more jiu-jitsu. So here, Frazier's going to come. We've already taught chop, spin. So now we're going to go ahead and start the chop. Here he is all the way down. So he's executed the chop. Now we're going to go, and he is going to reach for the bicep. The inside of the, see how his hands are so extended? He's going to grab that. See where his eyes are? His eyes are at the point on the bicep where he wants to grab. So he's going to grab the bicep, and he's going to pull. So it's an arm drag. So he chops, arm drag. That offensive lineman is going to stumble for a moment. It shortens the edge. So as you can see here, this is from the other side. He clears the hips here. You can see he pulled the arm, and he's cleared the hips. So you have the chop, you have the chop spin, and now you can chop arm drag, all off the same speed. This shortens the edge. If you're a first down, great. Boom, shorten the edge and get into the pass rush lane. That's going to cause a problem for the launch of the quarterback. Okay, this is a leg tap. All of us club and rip, right? All you have to do when you finish is hit the back of the leg. You know, don't you remember standing in the lunch line in elementary school? I remember getting sent to the office for this. You come up to the guy in front of you, he's got your tray, and you tap in the back of the leg, and it gives, and he dumps his tray. Same thing here. You finish the chop. If you tap the back of the leg, he's going to stutter. He's going to just drop his weight, and again, it's going to give you a nice short edge, and he's going to have difficulty recovering, especially with a good offensive lineman that recovers well. This is a good way to take them off their game. Just tap the back of the leg as you finish. So when you talk about finishing, what's that mean? It's more than just finishing to the quarterback. It's finishing your pass rush move. So I chopped. What's next? I got to bring the hip through, which we talked about. Here it comes. But I can shorten that edge also if I just tap that leg. Okay, what happens if he gets thick on me or I stall? So he strikes, he's thick. Now, opposite hand, opposite wrist. I'm going to grasp the wrist. That tackle may have me physically. You know, one of the things we've had to learn over the last probably 20 years is going from linebackers that were as strong and as bulked as an offensive guard or tackle to now we have speed guys. So how does a 205-pound man win against that 280 to 320-pound man? We have to use levers. His abductors and adductors of his extended arms are less strong than when he presses. So I'm going to grab the outside wrist, and then I'm going to pull it out. And now look how it opens the hips. Now I can open up, and I can step through and proceed with the pass rush. So if I get stalled, opposite hand, opposite wrist, peel it back, step through and rip. I want to share something with you before I finish tonight that I have to share this. I think it's really important. This shot was taken late in a game in 2010 against Calgary, and it had been a long period of time since somebody had won, since Toronto had won in Calgary. And we have to teach so that our athletes learn every step of the way. The young man that I'm holding up had taken no physical reps during a week. He was our backup Mike, had taken no physical reps, had taken drill reps, meeting reps, and I met with him one-on-one, and he took film reps. Just like Robin and Noel talked about, we worked his eyes off the field. We worked it, and he took dry reps, or he repped his eyes while the starter was going, but hadn't taken a rep all week. The starter gets hurt. It's in the fourth quarter of the game, and Calgary's driving, and this guy gets the pick that inevitably led to success. So we have to make sure that when we're talking to our athletes, we're not just talking to the guy that's going to be the first to line up. We have to be sure that that guy that's second or third that may play, because you know when he's going to play? He's not going to play at the beginning of the game. He's going to play when the game's on the line. You got to make sure the number 2 and number 3 guy can make the foul shot with no time on the clock. That's how we got to coach these young men. Guys, I got to tell you how happy I was to talk to you tonight. If you got any questions, that's great. There's my email. Reach out to me anytime. I'm really humbled by the cast you have here, Paul. And I wish everybody the best of luck in 2020 and 2021. And I guarantee you what, people got a lot of questions about the CFL. I'll tell you this, the CFL's tradition is that it has stood the test of time. It has been challenged time and time again. And I can guarantee you that the tradition of the CFL is to stand the list of time. I can tell you it's the destiny of the CFL to overcome the test of time. And we're only going to get better.
That was awesome, Coach. If you want to unshare there, and then you'll be able to see the
Yeah, buddy.
The other people.
Great.
So one of the things that a lot of people ask me for right now is like what kind of drills I can be doing and stuff. All these noodle drills you just showed, Coach, those are awesome deals that we could put out as college coaches and stuff for our players to be doing, you know, with their cousin or whatever it is. They don't need to have another athlete there. Not making fun of you holding those things, but the person just has to stand there and you can get all those reads. That's a lot of great stuff right there, Coach. So if you guys have any questions, just go ahead and unmute yourselves and go for it. Go for it, Coach. Oh, you got it.
Hello. Hey, Coach, I have a question for you.
Shoot, buddy.
Oh, I know that a lot of coaches teach flipping the hips, and a lot of coaches also are going towards of not flipping your hips and keeping your feet running while whatever moves it is. So what's your thought process through all that, Coach?
Well, I am not. I am more stay moving vertical, right? So I would say I'm less on swinging my hips, okay? Because you get a lot of guys, that's what they're taught. I want to get my hip past your hip as fast as I can, all right? I'll pin and polka when when that guy gets a little thicker and I have to club him and get my hips by because I'm thick, then you can't just step through. Does that make sense? So
Yes,
I want to stay vertical and get my hips past his hips first. If I stall, then I may have to polka to get my hips by.
Yes, sir.
Dance,
and I know,
right?
yeah, I know some coaches also do open hips and closed hips. What's your teaching progression within that?
Well, you know, I think I'm going to win with speed first because it's not only if the hip is open, has the hip, have you moved and where is it on my track? So if you bisect my track, that to me is whether the hip is open or closed to react. I want to know if you're on so if you get thick on me, if you cross my track, if you're forcing me to widen my track, then I'm going to work the counter.
Yes, sir. And then last question. Sorry about that, Coach.
No problem.
when you're rushing your guys, are you saying, hey, this is your QB target point, or you're waiting to go 1 yard past? For example, D-ends. I was always taught D-ends, when you're 1 yard past your QB, you come back. Are you teaching more QB target point with that, or what's your teaching progression with that, Coach?
Yes, each week I'll give them the launch point, right? We'll measure launch point by down and distance and situation and action. So if pocket is 7.5, 7 3/4, that's where we'll work the launch point, right? And if I get elevated on the quarterback, if I lose leverage on the quarterback, then I'm going to come back. I'm going to try and counter or work back to the quarterback, because generally what will happen is he'll start to climb. The inside rush now is going to stop, and then he's going to slide out to find a window to throw. When he slides out to throw, when I recover, I should be able to make the sack. And you'll see a lot of sacks are when you counter back after you get high. Now, you may be high not because you were even taken high by the tackle or the guard, but you were taken high because the quarterback stepped up. You know, if you watch Bo Levi, he's one that's going to climb the pocket. So once he gets to depth, he is not going to sit there patiently waiting for you to get to that point. He's going to change the loss point so that he alters the rush, right? And he gets you to think about stuttering the rush, because he's going to change the launch point on you. So that he may climb, which now, again, puts you out of a leverage, right? So if I lose leverage on that quarterback, I want to get back into a leverage position on him. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, sir, it does. And then last one, I promise. Most places go have a plan, keep it simple, or are you more of attack, react?
No. I want my player to be intuitive, Coach. If I do a good job as a coach during preparation, he's seen it enough that he is going intuitively. He is going to go step to the step. He's going to sequence off of what the offense is doing without even realizing it. If I do a good job in his prep, just what both the coaches were talking about, those drills should put them in a situation where they lose cognitive thought when they play. And they play, and actually when they go back and watch, wow, that's how I got that pick. That's how I got the sack. It has to be intuitive. So that's what I was talking about when you asked about the open hip, closed hip. I think it becomes intuitive. I think they've watched enough film, and it may be the hip on that offensive lineman, or it may not be, but they will intuitively react to what they see. I just think that the repetitions, the film work, and the words that you use, your ability to translate, ability to take verbiage and text and create that into reality is going to give him the intuition necessarily to be an elite player.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking. Thanks for being on tonight.
Well, that was excellent, Coach. Thank you for sharing all that with us. From working with you, I know that you're really deep into all those studies about launch point and how much time the get-offs and everything, very analytical. So it's always fun to hear you share some of that wealth of knowledge you have on that. So I appreciate you jumping on tonight.